Welcome to Meditating with John Vervaeke. We live stream every weekday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, with Mondays alternating between a new lesson called Dharma Day and a review of the whole ecology and practices, which is called Upaya Day. There'll be no stream next Wednesday due to scheduling conflicts. If you're joining us for the first time, you're most welcome. For previous lessons and sits, see the description. And what I recommend you do is do the first lesson and then start joining us every day. And then once or twice a week, do another one of the lessons, and you will very quickly integrate with the community. Please like the stream to increase the visibility in the YouTube algorithm. At the end of every sit, there is Q&A. Please limit the questions at that time to questions from anywhere in the whole ecology of practices. For more general questions, please join me today for the general live stream Q&A on YouTube at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I think that's everything we need to do to get ready. We'll begin, as always, with chanting, and then we'll go into the silent sit, and we'll have a nice chunk of time to get to some questions. Please remember that in addition to questions, comments and sharing are really also important to the lifeblood of this community. All right, everyone. So set your phones on Do Not Disturb. Let's get into position, and we will begin when I say begin. Begin. Begin your silent sit. slowly come out of your practice, trying as best you can to integrate what you cultivated in your practice with your everyday consciousness, cognition, character, and communitas, perhaps by reciting the 5 promises to yourself. Oh, good. We have a bit of time for some questions. That's excellent. I look forward to these questions a lot. I look forward to, hopefully, many of you can come this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, especially if you have more encompassing questions. This is from Awad Jonas. Is it necessary to take short inhales during the chant, or can one have a longer and deeper inhales and exhales? You can take longer and slower inhales and exhales if you wish. But that's one of the difficulties that we're doing it virtually, because when people do it as a group, they sort of in this self-organizing fashion get into a rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. I can't hear you guys doing that, so I just fall into the pattern when I'm chanting on my own. But don't take that to be sort of, a very rigid representation of the pattern of breathing that needs to be engaged in when you're doing the chanting. Whatever engages the musicality, the physicality, the embodiment, right, the invocation of emergence in Om and of emanation in One, whatever does that for you reliably, then pattern your breathing according to that. Toggle everything as you seek out the aspiration to enlightenment. Kira Koger. Hi, Kira. It was so good getting to meet you face-to-face virtually the other day, yesterday, I guess. So that was a great pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the time at that conference. Rafe Kelly put together an amazing conference on movement and how it contributes to a meaningful life, movement practices. And in connection with that, this Monday on Dharma Day, I'm going to teach you Tai Chi Walking, which is a form of walking meditation. And then I'll add in, as the week goes on, we'll add in arm movements, and you'll get a sequence of Tai Chi called brush knees. And so we're going to be bringing in a little bit more movement in as well. Sorry, Kira, I should get to your question now. Often when I do inquiring mindfulness, I will get a movie reference to a character. I often say my unconscious talks to me in movies. I think my question is, what do I do with that? So that's excellent. I think that's very normal for many of us. In the practice, keep going, but take note of that character. And you might want to then take that into another practice, which I have not talked too much about, the kind of active imagination, a Jungian practice in which you would invoke that character in imagery and then try to let it be spontaneously animated by, I guess, information, communication from the unconscious, and then try to interact dialogically with it. And so that can be a powerful way of trying to open up the channel. I recommend that while you're doing the inquiring mindfulness, you still treat that as another valuable portal that you're grateful to, and you step beyond, you step through. But this is also a symbolon. A symbolon means to join two things together, the conscious and the unconscious, that is potentially present to you. And then so taking up something like active open-mindedness, which we'll talk about, because it's basically a theurgic, a Neoplatonic practice, and we'll talk about that when we do the wisdom of Hypatia. But that you could probably go online and find a couple. Make sure it's by somebody who has training in Jungian therapy, some stuff on how to do active imagination. There's some books. You might want to take that character into active imagination as a way of affording more symbolic discourse between your conscious and unconscious mind. Like I said, we will come back to that later when we get in more depth. I'm sorry, I keep promising you all these practices, but we will get to them. And you can see how they complement, see how naturally they complement what we're doing in these Eastern-oriented practices. So that's a suggestion, Kira, for now. And like I say, by the time we get into the wisdom of Hypatia, that's something we'll be able to pursue in more in depth, all of us together. And hopefully you'll be able to ask some more penetrating questions at that time. Dimitar, how do I use a journal to cultivate my Buddha in a period where I have no insights to write down? What do I write about? So when you don't have insights, well, you probably do, you're just not realizing them, but many of them are not full-blown aha experiences. You might just notice something about somebody that you hadn't noticed before. Or you might, when you realize that you've caught yourself from distraction throughout the day and you come back. Moments of mindfulness are very important moments. Moments also when you felt that you stepped outside of being locked into that sort of hurt, hunger, fever framing of egocentrism, when you had a genuine impulse of generosity or caring for another person. It will probably very quickly get permeated and twisted by egocentrism that besets all of us. But don't get frustrated or don't fall into despair about that. There is nevertheless, if there was not actually a genuine moment of generosity and outreach, the machinery of egocentrism wouldn't have to swoop in so powerfully to constrain and control it. So try to take note of that. Try to take note of those moments. And so try to think of it a continuum from all the way up to sort of full-blown aha, almost epiphany insights, down to little moments of noticing mindfulness, noticing a difference, noticing perhaps a change in your orientation toward things, and especially moments of generosity, outreach, of what's called ecstasis in the Neoplatonic tradition, standing beyond yourself. Those moments when you are genuinely, even for a moment before that other machinery gets in, right? You're beyond yourself. So take note of all of those. You may be also in an aesthetic experience. When you're in music, you may realize sometimes that you get caught up ecstatically beyond it. Note that, remember it, instead of just letting it drift away into the half dream of memory. I can't quite read it. It's either fuat or fual. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Occur. Observation. Watching how air was moving the leaves on the plant outside, I observed some amazing synchronicities with my thoughts and perception. This is the first time. I want to do again. Thanks again, John. So what tends to happen, and this is something you have to treat very, very carefully. As you get into these practices, as you start to get reciprocal opening happening, as we've talked about, there will be more of these what you call synchronicities, sort of things happen where there seems to be a resonant correspondence between what's going on inside and outside. And this is very tempting, and I think perhaps to some degree even Jung fell prey to this temptation to get into sort of thinking of this magically, and that it gives us sort of a secret way in which we can manipulate things. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying that this is something we need. Remember what the Buddha said. The Buddha was not very specific about what you needed to do in order to be a disciple, a follower. But he said, this is how you know someone is not one of my disciples, when they offer to perform a miracle. So, right, noticing those synchronicities is something that you could write in your journal and celebrate. But it's very important to resist an inflationary impulse that comes up very naturally when those kinds of resonances occur. So that's just some overall guidance there. That's definitely something to note in your journal. Note it as an indication that reciprocal opening is probably occurring, but remember to frame it in a non-inflationary manner. I mean, what we're ultimately after in some ways, this is a Neoplatonic way of putting it, is we're after non-inflationary identification with what is most ultimate. The great temptation, and this is in so much mythology about the evil sorcerer, is as that starts to occur, we snap it back inside our egocentric framing, and we try to swallow the ultimate into ourselves, a form of blasphemy and idolatry that is deeply destructive of everything we're trying to realize in our aspirations towards wisdom and enlightenment. If you start to lose the sense of your mortality. Your mortality isn't the fact that you're going to die. It's in the first noble truth. Your mortality is that there is no area of your life, no part of your psyche that is not susceptible to dukkha, not susceptible to self-deception. That, to remember your mortality is to remember no matter where you turn, you are limited by that perennial threat. And that, right? And it's very easy to start forgetting that when we start to, because it is truly wonderful. Joseph Pickens. Hello, Joseph. It's good to have you here and asking questions. What should the mind be doing during the moving? So the Zhenjung is the sitting ones. When you're moving, so if you're doing any of these, so this is the Taoist, there's a yin and yang. So in the movements, what you're generally doing is there's an opening and closing of the body in some fashion, and then you're doing the same thing with your mind. So when I'm opening my hands, for example, this is like metta, and I'm opening up my attention out towards the horizon that encompasses me. And then as I close my hands, this is yang, and then this is the yin movement. This is the movement towards the center that ultimately grounds me. So opening up to the horizon that accompanies me, moving towards what's called the axis mundi, the axis of the world, the center that grounds me. So my mind is moving yang and yin with the moving practices. Kay Conloy, I always have a song running through my mind when I try to meditate. Do you have any tips to deal with this? So that's very often the case. Trying to do something about it is the thing that will make it worse. So is it possible to leave it in this, because this is what I do, and it seems to work for me, is I don't treat it as an obstacle. I try to get it so that it's in the background and periphery of my awareness, where it just runs. And then what I've noticed is if I can get to that place where I'm not fighting it, I'm also not indulging it, just it's there, and I treat it almost like, you go into a temple and there's music off in some room, people are chanting. I'm just meditating here, and they're off there, and this is a part of my mind chanting. It's off in some other room. And what happens is that really fades in its ability to sort of get a grip on my awareness. Sometimes it fades into silence, sometimes it just diminishes, but I found that has been very helpful for me for dealing with that kind of inner music. Karima, sharing an observation. Thank you for sharing observations. Observation, I began speaking metta aloud to begin with, and during when mind began wandering, found it powerful and good to keep focus. few distractions, used to be safe, well and happy, and free from suffering, peaceful. Then deepened with suchness and moreness, finally sent from my heart without words. Best metta yet. That's fantastic, Karima. Thank you for sharing that. The way that happens. I believe you were also there yesterday. I believe I saw you, but I don't think I got to speak to you. So yeah, that sort of outer speaking, and then it's very analogous to Alexio Divina, and the way it became more and more internalized and more soulful with the suchness and muchness until it finally moves to a wordless thing. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Karima. And when that happens sort of naturally and it unfolds, that progression, very, very powerful, very, very helpful. Gabriel Rubenstein. Hi, Gabriel. Observation. After the answer you gave to my question last week, thanks, made a real breakthrough in Vipassana. I was on a high for the rest of the day. I felt able to tap into the dynamic ground of my mind easily. It's good. After that, strangely, a mild depression set in for a couple days. Yes. This has now subsided, but I think on some level I was imagining my meditation would give me magical powers. Yes. And the quantum leap in my progress disillusioned me somehow. Yeah, that's exactly right, Gabriel. That's exactly right. And that goes to what I was talking earlier about how these epiphantic, ecstatic moments, they are great, right? But like I said, you will also have, because those are the big frame making moments. You'll also have those periods of dryness that are also important because they are the periods of frame breaking. And very often you get a rebound effect, like you just described. We get this frame making, but that doesn't mean that the machinery is all gone. And then we have to go back and do frame breaking, and we have to wrestle with patterns. And we're wrestling with a perennial problem, which is the temptation, right? The temptation to inflation. So take heart in the fact that you recognized it, and you have gone through the yang and the yin, and now you're getting the point of stabilization between them. Dimitar, do you have any book recommendations or online resources you can point to for guidance on practicing and internalizing active open-mindedness? I do. Hang on. Sorry, I'm going to have to go off camera. This is odd, I know, but just hang on for a second. I'm going to try and get that book. As I said, we will come back to this in more detail when we come to the Theurgia part of Neoplatonic practice. So a very good book for engaging in active open-mindedness is Imagination, A Space of Freedom. I particularly like the subtitle, Dialogue Between the Ego and the Unconscious. This is by Verena Kast, K-A-S-T. And this is a book on how to start practicing active imagination. Here's a good book for sort of background understanding and material on it, called Encounters with the Soul, Active Imagination as Developed by C.G. Jung by Barbara Hanna. And then I recommend, this is a very famous book, supplementing that with the book by Gendlin, G-E-N-D-L-I-N, called Focusing, which is a good way to sort of making this practice more embodied as a practice. So I hope that's helpful. Also, any similar resources for logical reasoning and argumentation. I'm not going to go off camera again, Dimitar. I will give you something similar to that when we get into Stoicism with the wisdom of Hypatia, and we'll learn how to bring aspects of that in sort of in a Socratic fashion. I do recommend, there's previous videos where I've recommended that what you need to do first before you do that is you need to start cultivating active open-mindedness. Get the books on the cognitive biases, read one a day, Just try to note it at the end of the day. Don't push yourself. Let it permeate and percolate, and you'll cultivate active open-mindedness. You need to really situate any attempt to improve logic and argumentation within the virtue of active open-mindedness. There's a lot of argument and evidence behind what I just said, so it's a very important point. Road Jonas, the sun came out in Sweden today. I found myself lost in the rays while naturally applying some of our practice without aiming to do that. It was a simple and magnificent experience. For that, I am very grateful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's what I mean about when it spontaneously comes up, right? When the patterns and principles in your practice spontaneously start to come up in your life, in your everyday experience. That's when the integration is occurring. That's a moment in which your Buddha nature, your inner sage is starting to take on a life of its own. Thank you for sharing that. That's deeply encouraging to all of us. So everyone, thank you for joining today. I hope to see you again this afternoon at 3 p.m. if you can make it. I want to thank my dear friend and techno major Mar, my beloved son Jason, who's always behind the scenes pinch hitting. Please subscribe to this channel to be notified of the next video. You'll also find links to the lecture series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, the Dialogos series, Voices with Vervaeke, in which some of the main themes of this course are discussed and related to other themes and situated within a more encompassing context. Please invite others who might benefit by joining this series. Brett is here, pleasure of doubt, I should say. So please join the Discord server to chat with others, to sit with others, do the moving meditation practice. I believe you got moving practices. I think you're also chanting together, also to get into excellent dialogue and discussion. I strongly encourage the Discord server to again home the Sangha this upcoming Wednesday. We're doing this every weekday morning at 9:30 Eastern Time, as I just mentioned. However, we will not be doing it next Wednesday due to scheduling difficulties. Please remember that continuity of practice is more important than sheer quantity of practice. There is no enemy worse than your own mind and body, but there's no friend, no ally, no true companion on the path better than your own mind and body. Be lamps unto yourselves and to each other. Take care, everyone. See you on Monday. Hopefully some of you this afternoon. Bye-bye.